Hello and good evening, and welcome to another episode of Leadership Matters, a bi-weekly half-hour series aimed at supporting our leaders. And I am Dr. Kenroy Burke, your host, leadership coach, and mentor. And this evening, we are going to continue the conversation on leadership matters simply because leadership matters. But before we do that, let us hear from our sponsors.
Crumb's Bakery, so good, even down to the last crumb.
So this evening we are talking leveraging our soft skills, and I'm so delighted to have with me servant leader, trainer, and tourism executive Davina Lane. Davina, welcome to Leadership Matters.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burke. Thank you for having me, and it really is a pleasure to be here this evening.
Fantastic. So before we go any further, I'm going to ask you, Davina, to tell us a little bit about who Davina Lane is.
Well, I hope I can answer this question. I normally help people answer this question for interviews, so let's see how I do now. So, Davina is someone who has worked in the tourism sector for almost all of her career, which spans about, I would say I've worked in the tourism sector for about 16 years. I also have human resources development experience. And I'm also a fun loving person. I like to think of myself as someone who leads with humor. I like to say that I think life is short and therefore it should be enjoyed. Um,
Mhm.
I am the eldest of three, and yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Okay, you sound almost as though you force yourself to stop there. But we're happy this evening to have you and to hear a little bit about you. So, Davina, one of the things that we want to discuss this evening is the whole concept of leveraging our soft skills. Let's start at the very beginning. What are soft skills for those persons who are listening to us? Exactly what are soft skills?
Soft skills, sorry about that. Soft skills are also what people like to call human skills. I know there are some people who don't like the term soft because they think it may mean it insignificant, but soft skills really are those intrinsic things that really tell us about our character and our personality and our attitude. So, contrary to technical skills, which are hard skills, so things like being able to use a computer or use a particular type of machine, or maybe if you're an astronaut, knowing about particular type of physics, those are hard skills. Soft skills really relate to you as a person. So how you relate with other people, your attitude, those types of things.
Okay, so why are these things important? If I know how to do my job, I'm thinking to myself, I know how to do my job. This is enough. Is that the case? Why are these things important?
It surely is not the case that you only need to know how to do your job. So the thing is, we go to work and we work with people. And
Mhm.
because we work with people, we really need to make sure that we are able to get along with people. I often say hard skills get you through the door, but soft skills will keep you there. So,
Say that again. I want you to say that again for somebody who is watching or listening.
hard skills will get you through the door, but
Mhm.
soft skills will keep you there. So, if you, for example, are a computer technician, you will need to be actually able to fix computers. And when you go
Yeah.
to the interview and you show them that you can fix all the computers in the world, they say, yes, you're perfect. We love you. Come on board. But then when
Mhm.
you go into the job and you're working around people and you're angry and you're aggressive and you can't work well in the team, you don't like people to give you feedback, and you just are someone who no one really wants to be around, then the company is not really going to see you as an asset any longer. They are going to begin to see you as a liability because here you are upsetting other members of the team. And in the end, ultimately affecting performance, ultimately affecting your performance, their performance, and largely the company's performance. So it is not just um, important to have these hard skills or technical skills. We really need to be able to get along with people, to be personable, to be empathetic. These are critical.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're now in a space where we're hearing a lot more about it. I think one of the things that has become a major part of the conversation, especially during this period that we're in, is the whole concept of these soft skills. Davina, talk to us. How has COVID been treating you as a leader?
Ah, I would say initially I accepted it and I kind of just went with the flow, for lack of a better phrase. So at the very beginning, it was a bit crazy. It was like, what on earth is going on? But then as the days went by, you kind of thought, okay, this is the way things are. I still need to function during this.
Mhm.
So in the first half, I would say around 2020, I pretty much continued as normal. I had some goals set for myself and I was able to, achieve those. And I had just started a new role and I was able to pretty much function, pretty much function seamlessly at that time. As the year turned, however, and as you know, Barbados went back into lockdown at the end of, there was a surge at the end of 2020, and then we went back into lockdown, close to the beginning of 2021. And I think at that time was really where things began to shift with me a bit. And I realized that I may not be handling things as well as I could be. And I work in the tourism sector, which
Mhm.
has been one of the hardest hit sectors, if not the hardest.
Yeah.
So dealing with, I serve a membership base. So dealing with all of that, having lots of people coming to you for queries and all these things, that kind of took its toll. And around March, I remember I said I need a break, and I went off on a staycation around the time that we were opening back up because I really needed to take that time for myself. And so for me, I found that the recognition that I needed this break was big for me because I think sometimes I tend to be someone who internalizes stuff and just goes with it because this is what it's going and not necessarily recognizing how my emotions are actually affecting me. So I was really glad that I was able to note that and to do something about it. And I will tell you, Kenroy, at the end of that week, I felt heaps better. Heaps. I mean, it was really like, okay, I'm ready to go again and pursue this mission.
Okay, so you just spoke about an extremely important principle there. Um, where leaders, especially during this period, some persons don't take vacation, some persons just keep going. And I guess to some extent there's an adrenaline pump. So because the adrenaline is going, you keep going and you think that you're able to do it all. How important is it for a leader to just pause and to step back sometimes from the mission?
It is key. It is critical. It is, there is a saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And it is
Yeah,
so true. There's no way you can help someone if you are not in a position to help them.
yeah,
If you're ill, you can't help someone.
yeah.
And illness is not only physical, it's mental as well. And I say to people also, boundaries are important in relationships. And we don't like to think that we have a relationship with ourselves. But we do. That's how I see it. You have a relationship with yourself. You have a responsibility to yourself, and self-care is important. So you
Yeah,
need to set up those boundaries and say, be it to other people, or even with yourself, to say no to someone, or even, recognizing, hey, I need to take a break. I don't believe in this working ourselves to death. I absolutely refuse that. I do
yeah.
not ascribe to that one iota. We absolutely need to take care of ourselves if we are then going to be able to pour into and take care of other people.
Fantastic. So, just before we go into our next segment, I'm going to pause at this time for a cause. But before we go into our next segment, I want to just encourage somebody who's listening. You just heard from a leader who's in the thick of things. She's in an extremely challenging sector. And she is saying, in spite of it all, you need to learn what it means to pause, to take a break, and to step back from the mission sometimes. Let's go for a break for our sponsor. Okay, so welcome back. We're having a conversation with servant leader, trainer, tourism executive, Davina Lane. And Davina, just before we went on break, we were talking about the importance of taking a break. Interestingly, the importance of taking a break. Now let's talk now about the soft skills. We mentioned it earlier. We're talking soft skills today. Why are soft skills important? Why are they important to the leader? And how does a leader develop those soft skills? Is it something that you are quote unquote born with, or whatever is the case? Why are these important, and how is that leader going to develop those soft skills?
So, like I mentioned the example earlier, soft skills are really important because that's how I would say that's how the world works. We are people. We're not an island. No
Mhm.
one is an island. We need people to help us achieve our goals. We have families. So these are really the things that help us to get along with each other, be that
Yeah.
in your familial relationships, your work relationships. I know right now we're
Mhm.
talking about leadership, but leadership is broad. You don't only lead at work. So
Mhm.
soft skills are the skills that people liken to emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And emotional intelligence, I know, is what really is one of the buzzwords right now. But
Mhm.
those are the things that help us in our relationships with other people. So that's why they're important for leaders. Because I know some people think that you really shouldn't care what other people think about you. And there is an extent that I understand that statement, but I also
Mhm.
believe that as a leader, you really should be endearing to people. If you want
Yeah.
people to listen to you, if you want people to buy into your message, if you want
Mhm.
to actually have a make a mark and make a help someone to change for the better, spark something in someone's mind, then people need to actually like you. People don't hang around people they don't like unless
Yeah.
they are a little bit off or have some kind of ulterior motive, generally
Yeah.
speaking. So people need to be endeared to you. And that is what I believe. Um, that is why I believe soft skills are important as a leader. They're critical.
Great, great. So you were talking a little bit about emotional intelligence, and it is true. It is a buzzword. Lots of persons are talking about this whole concept of emotional intelligence. But let's talk a little bit about something you mentioned earlier: empathy.
Mhm.
Empathy. We were talking about how tough this period is. As a leader, how important is it for us to be empathetic? I think that may not sometimes even have heard the word, it seems sometimes. But how important is it for us to be empathetic as a leader?
It is so important. So, empathy is about understanding where someone is coming from, understanding how they're feeling, and how that
Mhm.
really will affect them, affect their performance. Empathy is about compassion as well,
Yeah,
consideration, being considerate, being kind, really extending a hand to someone. Empathy is paramount, especially in the time of COVID, where we have so many people who are suffering, who are
yeah,
struggling, persons who have lost their jobs or persons who are on pay cuts, but yet still have the same expenses, the same responsibilities, may not necessarily come to work if you're on a pay cut, you may not necessarily come to work and be able to give 100% output because your mind is now on the debt collector that may be calling you, or somebody at home who may be dependent on you, and you don't know how you're going to be able to say to them, well, I don't have enough money to buy food. So
yeah.
empathy, those are just a few examples, but empathy says to that person, I understand. How can I
Mhm,
help? How can I
mhm.
actually sit here and listen to you, fully
Yeah,
listen to everything you're saying to me without butting in? Sometimes
yeah,
things don't necessarily require our response, they require just for our presence, our listening skills. And empathy, therefore, during a time like this is crucial. Empathy for the mother at home, having to mind the school children and still complete your work. So being able to put things in place to
yeah.
assist your employees at this time shows empathy.
Yeah, right. So we're looking also from the perspective of leadership and obviously embracing these kind of concepts because we know that sometimes we
Definitely.
think that it's just for the frontline person, it's for the employees, they're the ones who
Def-
should do it. And I think sometimes we shove it over their area and we think that it is important for them to do it. Let's talk now about emotional intelligence. Let's break this down, break it down into its components. Emotional intelligence and leadership.
Well, emotional intelligence is something that I myself am learning a lot more about. I
Mhm.
recently enrolled on a course, and I'm really trying to get a grasp of the entire gamut of what emotional intelligence really is. But
Mhm.
it's about self awareness,
Yeah.
it's about managing yourself,
Mhm.
it's about managing your relationships. So these are all part of emotional intelligence and what emotional intelligence really means for us. So when we have an emotion or when an emotion pops up,
Mhm.
what do we do? How do we deal with that emotion? Do we react? Do we respond?
Yeah.
And those are two very different words, reacting and responding. So reacting, is something quite a bit more hurried. You might not necessarily be thinking straight.
Mhm. Mhm.
Responding, you have actually given consideration to what you need to say, if you need to say something at all, how you need to act, that sort
Yeah.
of thing. So emotional intelligence really covers the gamut of those three things that I would have mentioned. Then the self-awareness, the I believe I'm missing one as well. Self-awareness, relationship management, self-management. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to control yourself as a leader. You are not, you should not be in the reactive segment.
Yeah.
You should be in the responsive segment. You should be thinking about your moves before you make them, deliberate,
Yeah.
intentional. These are words that really should go along very well with leadership.
Okay. Fantastic. So you're speaking to us about the fact that several persons are going through challenging periods. As a leader, how important is it? With the whole concept of empathy also being a major part of it, how important is it for us as leaders to be listeners, active listeners? Now, leaders are learners, but leaders are also listeners. Let's talk a little bit about listening and how important it is for us as leaders.
So listening is something that I am actually trying to work on myself. I am one of these people who really likes Stephen Covey and his work. And he always there is something he talks about when he says we should listen to understand and not just listen to respond, not just listen to answer. Many times people speak to us, and before they even finish, we are thinking about the next thing they're going to say. We're thinking about what we should say to them. So many things we're thinking about, but not really listening to what that person is saying. And active listening requires that you really take stock of not only what the person is saying verbally, but
Mhm.
non-verbally as well, because many times both of the things, kind of correlate to each other, correspond to each other. Um, it also involves really processing what that person is saying. So Simon Sinek also talks about the fact that we really, when we're in conversations, we should really try to speak last, especially like in group settings. Really try to understand contextually and otherwise what is really happening in this conversation right now. And these are the type of things that leaders really should take the time to hone. You had asked me prior about, and I think I missed answering it previously, but you had asked me about how do people get these emotional intelligence skills, these soft skills, if
Yes.
people are born with them. And honestly, I don't believe that people are necessarily born with them per se, just like I don't believe people are born leaders. You may be predisposed to certain attributes in terms of your attitude, etc. But everything can be learned. Everything is about growth and development. And we really need to take the opportunity to really sit and reflect on the types of skills, hard and soft, that we need for our careers and for our lives, and spend the time to hone them. We can do, and everything does not require paying money, because our friend Google has lots of things that when you type in, you go and you type something in Google, and YouTube pops up, Udemy pops up, Skillshare, or so many other platforms where people are doing things for very low price, low cost, or free. And once you find that, you can take the opportunity, spend some time, and do what needs to be done. Put the work in, and the output will be different.
Fantastic. So we're gonna pause at this thing for a cause. We're gonna pause for a cause, and then we're gonna jump straight back into our final segment.
Here's some of your best news since the lockdowns. 7 Crumbs Bakery locations are now open on Sundays and bank holidays from 7 in the morning. They are Eagle Hall, Wildy, Fairchild Street, Oystons, Lords Hill, Speightstown and Fairview, while the other 10 Crumbs locations open Monday to Saturday as usual. Crumbs for a wide variety of fresh cakes, pastries and bread. Crumbs, so good, even down to the last crumb.
Even down to the last crumb. Crumbs, so good. So we are talking to Davina Lane this evening, and Davina, as we come in and we're coming into a close at this point in time, and we're talking these soft skills and etc. You said a little earlier that these are things that we can go and we can hone. They're skills that we can hone. They're skills, and you put a high priority on them at the beginning of the program. You told us that these things are extremely critical to our development, but also to the environment that we're in. During this pandemic period, what are some of those skills that Davina
Mhm.
Nobody else. Some of those skills that Davina has grown to have a greater appreciation of and has found extremely helpful during this period. So you've been going through, you've been walking through this journey for a while, but this period has brought you to appreciate these skills more. And as a result, you have not just had a greater appreciation, but you have found yourself making sure that you're very intentional in showing these. What are some of those skills?
Well, we mentioned two earlier, the empathy for sure,
Mhm.
and the listening.
Yeah.
Those are two things that I really put very high on the list,
Mhm.
that, in terms of this COVID period. The third one I will mention is decision making.
Yeah.
Decision making is something that is so important for leaders. We and I speak to this a bit on my platform, my social media platform. But I always say, right or wrong, make a decision.
Yeah.
You need to learn what to do and what not to do. And then sometimes you don't know until you do, if I'm
Yeah.
making any sense.
Yeah, you are making
So
sense. You're making
sometimes you
sense.
actually need to make the decision and let that decision show you whether it was a right decision or a wrong decision. But one of the things I share on my platform, and it's quite a funny quote, it said there are a lot of flat squirrels in the road who are there because they didn't make a decision.
Mhm.
Well, maybe they made the wrong decision too, but sometimes you really have to make the decision in life, and timing as well, and that could be the squirrel's issue. Timing on making the decision is important. So decision making is critical. It's one of those skills that is very paramount for leadership. And we really, as leaders, we really need to decide the types of things we will do on a daily basis, what will take priority. I always say to people, if you don't know what to do, think about what not to do, or think about what you don't want to do, and you're kind of halfway there.
Yeah.
So making those decisions is very important. The listening and the empathy as well have been carrying me through.
Great. So great. So great. So I want to say thank you. I can't believe already, Davina, that we are to the end of the program. But before we ask you one final question, and this is not a hard one, this is a fun question. Before we ask you one final question, we're going to pause one more time for our sponsor break. Okay, so welcome back. So, Davina, as we close this evening's program, if there, if you look right now at where Davina is and where Davina used to be, where she was at some point in time, what would you consider as a leader has been your greatest development? What do you consider has been the one thing, even if it be one or two, you might be want to share one or two, that has caused you to develop significantly to move from where you were probably 10, 15, 20 years ago to where you are today as a successful tourism executive?
I always smile when people use this word successful. I always get a little bit nervous. Um, but definitely, you don't even have to go back as far as 10, 15, and 20 years, because I was in a very different headspace, I would say, even 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And a mindset shift has brought me to where I am
Yeah.
today. I will shout the praises of self belief. It is
Hmm.
important. It is critical. Recognizing that you are here for a purpose, and I don't know about other people, but that's what I believe. That we are all here for a purpose, and recognizing that the time is flying by and this purpose is not being realized. And really shifting your mind and getting your mind right to be able to do the things that you would like to do. In in my in my opinion, not opinion, those things for me were service. I'm really, really key on service and giving back.
Right.
And so I really needed to get my mind right to be able to serve other people. I really needed to get my mind right to be able to lead other people, to be able to inspire people, to be able to possibly change systems and the way things are, so you have to be in a headspace that is optimistic, and where self-belief is very prevalent in order to be able to achieve the things you want to achieve, and I guess ultimately be a success.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so very much, Davina. Well said. Thank you for the time that we were able to have this discussion. We know we talk leadership because that leadership truly matters. So we had a wonderful conversation this evening with Davina Lynn, servant leader, trainer, tourism executive, and we heard a lot this evening about soft skills and the importance of honing those skills as leaders. I want to encourage you to join us again for the next 2 weeks on Leadership Matters, simply because leadership matters. We are a bi weekly half hour series aimed at supporting leaders. Thank you so very much for joining us this evening, and God bless you.